Right, well, it's bang on 12:30. Again, welcome everybody. My name's Craig McAlpine. We've got Kirsty and Nikki from McLaren and Gordon from MyCareerBrand. And Kirsty and Nikki, I'll hand over to you to kick things off.
Thanks, Craig. Well, hi everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Just a couple of things before we begin, and it looks like most of you are doing so, but just a reminder to please keep your microphones on mute and keep your cameras turned off. If you have any questions as we run through, there's a chat function, please use that. We're going to try and keep today short and snappy with just 20 minutes for the presentation, and then we'll allow 10 minutes at the end to run through any questions that you may have. So I'm Nikki Walshaw, and next to me is Kirsty McLaren. We both run recruitment agency McLaren Associates, which specialises in recruitment at all levels, from administration to chief executive and everything in between. We do work across all sectors, but we're particularly well known for our expertise in the non-profit, membership and professional association space.
And joining us today, as Craig has just said, Craig McAlpine and Gordon Holmes from MyCareerBrand. Craig is the founder of MyCareerBrand. In addition to working one-on-one with his clients, he designs and facilitates MyCareerBrand job seeker seminars and workshops. He's a regular guest speaker, presenting topics such as how to work effectively with recruiters, building compelling CVs, optimizing LinkedIn profiles, and compelling interview skills. He's also a regular publisher on LinkedIn, presents Asia Pacific webinars, and is a guest on United Kingdom podcasts for job seekers. And Gordon is an experienced career coach who specialises in helping people gain clarity about the direction in which they would like to take their careers. He's written MyCareerBrand's career direction and development planning and what's next coaching programs, and he's researched and written a lot about non-linear careers and found that there's considerable current interest in this career path option.
So as you know, today's webinar is focused on non-linear careers, why some people are choosing them and what to be aware of. Before we hand over to Craig and Gordon, we thought we'd provide you with a bit of a brief job market update. As you can see on that slide, that was a quick run through, but it's fairly self-explanatory, I think, in 10 minutes Q&A at the end. But for a job market update, typically recruitment activity, particularly in Wellington, is slow for a month or two in the lead up to an election. This time around, however, it's been unusually busy in the lead up, but since the election, things have definitely started to slow, and permanent job numbers have declined. In contrast, contracting recruitment has been slowly declining throughout the year, and many contractors have been opting to take permanent work for the job security that offers. Also, in the month or two before Christmas, recruitment activity is typically quite busy as employers look to secure staff for the new year. However, the job market this year has been anything but typical, and it has been quite hard to predict what the coming weeks might look like because of this.
The conversations that our consultants are having with our clients seem to indicate that after years of growth, we're now seeing a much more considered market. About 80% of clients that we've spoken with indicate that they're likely to either increase or maintain current staffing levels in the next 12 months. Although we should note that these are typically smaller to medium-sized organisations, as we've all seen in the media recently. Very large organisations such as MB Stats, Victoria University, for example, are much more likely to be considering organisational change, which may include redundancies. In the last few months, we've seen a huge increase in the number of job applicants per job. We had a general manager role which attracted 160 applications, and a graphic designer role that received 170. And these high numbers seem to be across all role types and levels of seniority. And while not all are suitable, it certainly indicates that competition for jobs has significantly increased from 6 months ago. So how do you make yourself stand out in this market, particularly if you have a non-linear career where the transferability and alignment of your skills and experience might not be so obvious to employers?
Before you begin to apply for new roles, you need to be really clear on what unique skills and experience you have gained from each role and how you can bring these together to meet the requirements of the job that you're interested in. Be really clear on your end goal and how this particular opportunity contributes to this, even if at face value it seems to be a sideways or even backwards move. And just as importantly, you need to be able to articulate your journey in a really compelling way that convinces the employer of your suitability for the role.
Over to you guys.
Okay, thanks very much, Nikki and Kirsty. That's a great market update and a great segue into non-linear careers and the different types of career paths. So in the first slide, I'm going to talk to 4 different types of career paths and allude to where non-linear careers fit within that. So the first type of career path, and probably the most well-known one, is the linear career path. It's the traditional straightforward progression, the entry level to more senior roles. Often it's pursuing a function or a sector or a industry. It's got a ladder as a typical climb the ladder as a linear career is typical. So people typically pursue well-defined and predictable trajectories. So for example, somebody might do a commerce degree in accounting and they might start their career as an assistant financial accountant and then work their way up to perhaps a chief financial officer role. So that would be an example of a linear career. And certainly my corporate career was one that was a linear career, starting as an HR assistant and working through to HR director and general manager HR level roles. The second type of career path that people can pursue is the expert career. That's where they have a specific niche field and they have a high level of expertise or mastery in a specific area, so a field, an industry, or a profession. And an example of that might be somebody that's done a PhD for a giant squid, for example, and then gone on to take a career at Te Papa as a giant squid specialist. And they've then gone on to international acclaim for their expertise and typically won awards. So that's the second area that we have different types of career paths, the linear first, expert second. The third area is expanding careers. So that's where people have a broad area of expertise and then they become curious about related areas. So they expand their skills and knowledge rather than sticking to a single fixed path. So an example of that might be somebody that's in an employee relations advisor role. Then they pop over to the other side of the fence to a union organizer role, and then eventually they might take on a conflict resolution mediator role. So examples of roles moving out from where they've started, but not necessarily pursuing a single path or climbing a ladder. And then the fourth example of types of careers is the episodic career, and that's characterized by changes in completely different fields. So on the bottom right, they're heading off in different directions. And there can be distinct phases or episodes within an episodic career. So periods of employment, periods of education, periods of time out of the workforce, possibly sabbaticals. Where do non-linear careers fit into this? Well, they typically arise from expanding careers or episodic careers. And we'll talk more about the non-linear careers shortly. But it's important to know that these career paths are not mutually exclusive. So you can pursue any one and then at a later time change direction and go off on a different career path or even into a non-linear career. Craig, anything to add on this slide?
No, not really. I think it's really important. We'll be delving into it shortly on the various areas that you should focus on and how you go about actually choosing between them. So I think that's the real key thing, and how you can elevate your decision making to move on, I guess, more intentionally.
Yeah, that word intentional will come through a number of times. So here's the non-linear career, and it's characterized by a variety of job changes. So shifts between different industries and sectors, and a pursuit of varied interests and opportunities. So typically a person pursuing this path would begin in one direction and then transition to different paths. Shifts typically happen when people make discoveries about themselves and gain new insights about their preferences. So in the workplace, pursuing a particular occupation or job, and then finding out the things that they like or dislike about it, and then perhaps making some changes. And these changes can also happen as unexpected opportunities present themselves as we go through life and also our careers. And as the image shows, during a non-linear career, your path may change directions. Nikki referenced it. It can go up, it can go sideways, or it even can go down, as shown by the arrows. So the path doesn't follow the typical upward trajectory of a linear career pursuing a ladder. You might still get to the same destination, but it's a very different path. And a non-linear career is often influenced by personal goals, interests, and circumstances as they change over people's lives and careers. Craig, you're going to expand on this, but anything on this slide?
No, I think when you take us through our case study shortly, Gordon, I think this will be amplified, even further. And I think being curious, not being afraid, and recognizing that the step side or step down isn't necessarily a negative is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes people can make a job change and think that they're made a mistake, but we can turn that around by what we learn. So it's not necessarily a backwards move. If we've learnt from it and take insights and reflections from it and bear that in mind as we pursue our career going forward. So Craig, over to you to talk about non-linear careers versus the typical linear career that most people know about.
Right. Okay. Look, apologies, everyone. We're having a bit of problem here with our slides today, but we'll get there in the end. Okay. So linear careers, generally we're seeing a very sort of like structured progression. We would typically look at an area of specialization. So where you might leave university with a degree and you might consider yourself to be a civil and structural engineer or a doctor, we tend to see that. Now, that doesn't mean that that particular career can't shift later on to a non-linear career, but generally what it means is it's a long-term commitment to that particular career. So I'm a civil engineer, and there's more stability and predictability, perhaps, from a linear career than there might necessarily be for a non-linear career. So maybe it's a way of also gaining surety, but is it? Because in today's market, I don't think that there is any surety, in whatever job you have, whether it be a downturn in the market in a particular area, or your organization may be facing challenges. So a linear career doesn't necessarily mean more surety. What it can mean, though, is more certainty in what you might be doing next. And I'll talk whether it might change in non-linear careers shortly. But in terms of advancement, it's generally based on seniority and experience, capability. So what you've got to make sure, though, is when you have that linear career, are you playing to your strengths? So a good way of testing that is to do something like a Gallup Clifton Strengths 34. Where you can have a look at your strengths and you can say, how well is this role actually playing into that? It might encourage you to start looking more non-linearly. In other words, to be able to bring some of those strengths to the table. So we have two coaches that coach in that particular area, Wendy and Kyla. So if you want to get in touch with them to go through that at some point, please do so. Or you could just do it yourself online, but certainly a coach will add a lot of I guess, structure in terms of your assessment of that and give you some fresh ideas. Now, non-linear careers, diverse experience. So you're bringing multiple streams to the table and you have the freedom to apply them. You may have more frequent transitions, and we'll see this in the case study shortly. And I've added in here too that sometimes you actually may be swimming against the tide. It can be uncomfortable. A non-linear career can be more uncomfortable than a linear, where you might just tend to slot in and follow a natural progression. It can be entrepreneurial as well. We'll often see entrepreneurs, flicking around from one particular type of role or job or whatever to another. And so the interest for them is change. It's motivational and so on. It's very much feeding into their strengths and their skills. They can utilize whichever skills that they like or want to apply. So entrepreneurial ventures definitely there. As per linear, though, there is continuous learning. So some of these areas you'll see in non-linear and linear do cross over. It's not to say that one is more so than the less. Obviously, in linear careers, so for a civil and structural engineer, for example, you've got ongoing development, professional development. In a non-linear career, it may be that you're actually learning about new things. You need to gain new skills to be able to get the best out of it. Adaptability, absolutely. If you're going into a non-linear career, it's not for somebody who doesn't like change. Okay, so a non-linear career will absolutely be required to have change as well. Could it lead to more personal fulfillment? Absolutely. Again, you're playing to your strengths. We know that when you're working on perhaps or having a role in your top 10 strengths, you're going to be happier. These are the things that you're born with as opposed to skills which you are trained at. And so you're going to be more happy. So that's one thing I'd say with a non-linear career is it does give you perhaps more opportunity if you're that way inclined to be able to play to your strengths. As well. It does have unique trajectories, and the way I interpret this is it may upset or look different to some people. So coming back to what Nikki and Kirsty were talking about before, in the case of a non-linear career, you need to have a good story. You need to be intentional. You need to have reasoning behind it. Otherwise, people will get lost along the way. Okay, so you need to understand transferability of learnings and so on, and what that will actually bring to the table. But again, if you want to be excited about your career, reinvigorated about your career, I'd highly encourage you to actually explore non-linear. Creative problem solving, again, possibly some crossover there between linear and non-linear. Different types of problems though, because again, you're going to come up with non-linear where you haven't necessarily had the people around you to learn from previous to the role. So you're moving forward in that way. Gordon, have you got any comment on that?
No, I think you've done a good summary, and you've also alluded to some of the points on the next slide too, why it would appeal to people.
Exactly. Okay. So again, not mutually exclusive, anything like that. So, you're going to get the variety of exploration, of self and outside of the normal career. Personal growth, absolutely. You're going to, if you're pursuing a non-linear career, you're going to really understand who if I was doing that, who I am as a person, and where the stress points are and so on. Would you agree there, Gordon?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why don't we go on to your career, because you've had a really interesting non-linear career. So briefly tell us about that career. Craig's doing that. He's got a career that has absolutely exemplified a non-linear career, and you'll see with this slide and the build just how it's evolved.
Right, there we have the first build. Gordon, can you see that okay?
Yes, I can.
Excellent.
So just briefly talk us through that, Craig. The career.
Yeah, so I am the case study today. So whereas Gordon has had a linear career, my career started off as a civil and structural engineer to where I am today as a career coach. I've added a few headings in there which talk to commonality through that. So went on to computer-aided design, which led me into technology, which was a support role for engineering. And then I really loved technology. So I felt, well, okay, then I'll find a technology company. So became technology, payments, and that led me into sales because all of a sudden I discovered that I was really good with communicating benefit and solutions to people. And so my manager at the time said, hey, Craig, you should be in sales. And it didn't fit naturally with me, but gave it a go, and there I was. Then into job board sales. So I went again, there's a relationship there with technology. Technology sales. So again, technology. So from coming from being a civil and structural engineer right through to technology actually now playing a very key role in what I was doing. At Citibank, the head of e-commerce there in New Zealand, again, relying on technology, but again in sales. Recruitment, technology. I decided that, hey, look, I learned a lot about technology. I know a lot about what it takes to actually build a technology team and what they need to deliver. So, and I enjoy people, and it had a sales aspect to it as well. So then got into that. And then career coaching. So, took all of effectively the amalgamation of what I was doing there. So coaching, solution selling, people leadership, technology solutions and enablement, solution design and creation, and bringing those all together.
So you didn't really plan to have a non-linear career, did you? It's kind of evolved as it's gone along.
Yes, and I think as I'll go and talk to later on, that I wished I'd actually been more intentional about that. And you'll see a couple of graphics there where I've included my strengths and also a diagram that talks to Ikigai, which we'll talk about later on as well. So definitely less intentional, Gordon, more I would say serendipitous and reactive.
And was there a particular time where you realized you were having a non-linear career, or it became a conscious decision that this is what you were pursuing?
Yes, there was, and I think that coming back to what Nikki and Kirsty talked about before is I don't think I had my story that well developed at that time. But where it's actually become more latterly that way is where I've had more confidence in myself, and actually stepped out and done it that way. And I guess, moving into where I am now and doing a lot of research and reading around careers and so on, then having the epiphany or aha moments and going, oh, that's what that was.
And you referenced the Clifton strengths and the Ikigai diagram there, the 4 overlapping circles. How have they helped you with a non-linear career?
Yes, so in that regard, I was playing to my strengths, and again, discovered relatively late in my career. I wished I'd had a conversation with Wendy or Kyla, earlier on in my career around strengths. But then, when I look back at it now and I look at my strengths, I can say yes, that's where I am now. I'm applying those strengths, and I'm much happier for it, and I think performing a lot better as well. So what I would encourage people to do is to look at your strengths, those areas that you're born with. Okay, so how do we get started? Well, I would say find your ikigai. Find out what you love and what you do. This is there's a diagram on here. What you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, what you get paid for, and so on. So look at these and think about, where to from here. What is it that I could do that would fulfill this, and find your direction. And I think, Gordon, you talked about a lodestar.
Yeah, it's a concept where sailors used to navigate by using a star, and when they used a particular star for their navigation, they called it their lodestar. And I think, as we've discussed how you've used the Ikigai, it has become your lodestar. It's the guiding point for you in a non-linear career.
Great. Okay, so now we're going to open it up to Q&A, I think, Gordon.
Yes, I think Nikki and Kirsty, you've got the questions there, please.
Yeah, so I've had a number of questions coming through. First, is a step down seen as a negative by prospective employers? If so, how do you turn this around to sell yourself to prospective employers if you have taken a step down?
I'll kick it off, and then each of the other presenters may wish to add to it. So I think it depends on the insights and the reflections that you take from it and the learnings. And if you've taken something from that you can sell positively about your insights or reflections from that learning, then I think it can be turned into a positive. But I agree that it can be a perception that it's not. Craig?
Yeah, I think you've really got what I talked about before, be intentional. So show, don't know if this is a real word, your intentionality. Okay, show the path, demonstrate the crossover, the transferable strengths, skills, and so on into the role. Yeah, Nikki, Kirsty.
Yeah, I think it's also important to be able to articulate the why. You know, people have different stages in their life and their careers. Family raising is one good example where someone might elect to, for a period of time, take a step down because they've got other responsibilities, or maybe caring for an elderly parent or sick someone. So I think it's about being clear as to why you made that decision and being able to communicate that really effectively so that people understand your motivations.
I think just to add to that, it might be why people who want to be more non-linear may find themselves working for themselves or more entrepreneurial, starting a business, because they haven't managed to be able to communicate that essence of the non-linear and how it actually relates, and therefore they may struggle to get employment in the typical scenario. And so their answer to it is to actually go and work for themselves, which doesn't always work out well either. So I think, you know, to Nikki's and Kirsty's point, it's like, get some help in understanding, you know, and being able to articulate that value proposition and what it means to employers.
Someone has asked how to do a CV with a non-linear career, or a career that started linear, then shifted non-linear, then back again.
Craig, that's your expertise.
Yeah, that's me. Oh my goodness. Gosh, and I know we've got somebody on the line here who used to be my employer as well. That said, she disestablished my role, didn't she? Okay, so yeah, it comes back to what I said before. Get some help, because somebody else working with you can unpack, you know, the benefits that you can deliver. So you've got to have that cross-sell opportunity in your CV, and it's got to be highlighted. You'll have a different first page, for example, than somebody perhaps who's been more linear. So I think there's various ways of architecting your CV. Make sure you get it architected by somebody who can unpack and repack what you've been doing to where you want to be, not just where you've been. The mistake with most CVs is they simply reflect the job title, or the employer, the job title, and the responsibilities and so on. And Kirsty and Nikki will look at it and go, yeah, and where's the correlation to this role that you're applying for?
There's a theme that's really coming through. Really, how do you articulate that? Where do you put it? Someone's made the comment that employers and recruiters in general are very resistant to hiring those seeking non-linear careers. You're a perceived risk and an idealist. Employers seek the safe bet. What do you have to say about that?
Kirsty, Nikki, you know, how do you feel about it? Is that true, or is that their perception?
It can be, yeah. I mean, employers are typically fairly risk averse, but I think if, again, it's about that compelling message and the why should we consider a on paper perceived more risky option, and what are the added benefits we would get that this person would bring because of their non-linear approach to their career. What have you learned, what have you gained, and what can you bring to the organisation that would make it a compelling opportunity for the organisation, that would make you think, actually, yeah, that's a considered risk that has good upside for the organisation, so let's go that way.
Yeah, they can bring a lot broader skill sets and a lot broader experiences than somebody just with a linear career. So there are potentially a lot of upsides, and it's about the articulation of that in a way that's attractive and compelling to the prospective employer.
Tying into that, so obviously the key message about your transferable skills, but how do you talk to the fact you have the ability to learn and adapt?
Well, I think learning agility would be one of your key attributes that you would be selling, and that's very attractive in a very fast-paced environment, that you can do that, and that you can hit the ground running, and you're very adaptable too if you've worked in different industries, different sectors, different functions. Craig?
Yes, I totally agree with that. I think but again, it's tying it back into the role at hand. How does that relate to the role at hand? I think employers also, yes, are looking for somebody who's not going to jump ship and jump all over the place and want to do different. They've got things they need to achieve. What does this actually mean for them? You've got to bring it back to your customer, and your customer is your employer.
Someone has asked, what about when you are a lot older with grey hair? Many recruitment agencies and companies seem to be put off by grey hair. Older candidates have a wealth of experience.
This is a theme that's come up in a number of our webinars, and often people with a wealth of experience want to share all of that experience, and then it becomes potentially confusing to recruiters and to prospective employers as to exactly what they're targeting. So it's back to Craig's point. It's about being very clear about what you're wanting to target and then the value that you can provide in a compelling way to that employer. And I've helped a number of people in this space, and we've had success when we've been very targeted about where you're going and what you've got to sell. There's certainly a lot of benefit and value. A lot of it, though, is how you articulate it.
It sometimes feels like you're in a CV writing competition. So those who can write their CVs better than others get noticed. If you're not a great CV writer, that disadvantages you.
Shall I answer that one?
Yes.
That's why we're here. The reality is you are in a competition. Not necessarily the best candidate. I think Kirsty and Nikki, if you don't know the candidate already, the best candidate doesn't necessarily get through to the first pass. If you've got a shocker CV, you can be rejected. Unless the recruiter actually knows you anyway, and they can say, look, the CV doesn't really point to it. And often I get people referred to me by search consultants or recruiting consultants because they know the person. They say the CV doesn't match what their capabilities are or for the role. Can you help them? So it's actually coming to us. And although we don't say we just write your CV, what we do is we extract the essence of who you are and what you do and what you bring. Your CV follows. But coming back to what I said before, you need to be able to align it to the role at hand, not just where you've been. But get help. Get somebody to look at your CV.
And someone has said, are there CV architects that you recommend?
Well, here we are.
We know some great ones.
I'll just say again, we don't write your CV for you. We take you through a process of understanding who you are, what your strengths are, what you want to do, what you will do, want to, and can do. As opposed to just creating a document that talks to where you've been. So, yep, you can go out there and you can just get somebody to write your CV for you. It might look good, but does it talk to where you want to be? Think about that.
And lastly, a question, not entirely clear, the question, but in this age with lots of candidates and the preeminence of search consultants, isn't the challenge to get past search research phase in the first place?
Nikki and Kirsty.
I mean, that's the first step in the hurdle, I suppose, is to get through that initial screening, search, research, headhunting to be part of a long list for consideration. Your CV will help you get there, and then the rest is up to you in terms of how you present in that phone screening conversation, how you turn up to the interview with the recruiter or the employer, and then so on. So yeah, that's definitely the first hurdle, and having some really good support from MyCareerBrand or other means to construct a really great CV is a good first step.
I actually think there's a step before then where there's the applicant tracking system. So there's the technology in behind that could knock you out in the first place. Unless the recruiter knows you, and they go looking for your CV, and if they're totally reliant on the ATS, and I've seen it before, the applicant tracking system has knocked people out that should have actually been in process. But for their CV wasn't getting cut through. at that point, or getting past that. And absolutely, yes. You know, if a search consultant or recruiter is involved, the first time that they meet you shouldn't be when you're applying for the job. You know, find out who that recruiter is that you might be working with. Get known. And by the way, it's not necessarily just the recruiter. It can be the candidate manager or the researcher. Don't underestimate their role in the selection process.
I would add to what Craig has said, and Nikki and Kirsty, that you also have a career brand that you can control and influence, and you also have a professional network. So all of those things that you can contribute to also shape and influence how you're received and perceived, in addition to just the CV.
Just one last question. How can I effectively demonstrate the relevance of my PhD in a different field, such as applying for a health promoter position in the Ministry of Health, even though my background includes experience as a public health researcher and fitness instructor?
It's back to the transferable skills that are relevant to the role that's being sought. Yep.
All the questions.
Right. Well, thank you very much for everybody for those questions. And I know we're running slightly over time, but My Career Brand would like to help you if you are thinking about exploring a non-linear career. Kirsty and Nikki alluded very early on when they were giving their market update that the market is tightening. So that means that there are potentially less opportunities and there's more competition for roles than what there were before. So what we might need to do is broaden our horizons and start thinking more laterally or more non-linearly. There's that word again, more non-linear. So, you know, have a think about that. If you want to work through what that could look like for you, just book an hour, you know, with one of our coaches. Go onto the MyCareerBrand website. And have a look at the coaches there, connect with the coach, and they can spend an hour for you, and we'll discount, we'll provide a discount on your first hour of coaching. So there'll be a 10% discount on that. We'll be sending out an email to everybody who's registered for this webinar following the webinar today with that on it, and so just take things from there. Our details are on there. Also, what I'd encourage you to do is to get in touch with Nikki and Kirsty and have a conversation with them as well. They've got some excellent blogs on their job seeker blog on their website, so do have a look at that too. We've also got a blog, so go onto the mycareerbrand.net website and get some advice from that or guidance, and look out for us on LinkedIn. Gordon is a great poster on LinkedIn and comes up with some great tips and so on. So look out for Gordon's posts too.
Great.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Nikki, Kirsty, have you got anything to close with?
No, thanks everyone for your time and participation.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for attending.
Bye.